Welcome to Birds of a Feather. Today we have a tiered plant stand DIY. To start, sand the piece just to get some of the loose rust off. Then wipe with a damp rag to get all the dust off. Here's fumble fingers. We're trying to tie up the back so that we can spray it in a vertical position.
Didn't work.
In DIY, if at first you don't succeed, try again. Spray on Trem Clad Clear in short bursts, just to be sure that you're getting every nook and cranny of the metal. Here we're taking the wheel for a spin. And as you can see, we finally got that back piece to stay put. Try to do this on a calm day with very little wind. We're getting everything underneath, even the wheels. This is the wood component, and we're going to be using liquid rubber on the inside. At first I was planning on planting directly into this piece, but I did change my mind, as you will see later. It's still a good idea to cover this up because liquid rubber is very difficult to remove on the surface of raw wood. So Hubs likes to be thorough, but it is going to protect the surface. Once this is done, Hubs is going to take this over to the air compressor and we're going to blow out the inside just to be sure that there is no further debris. Liquid rubber is thick, so we're using a paper cup to scoop it out. And now we're going to brush it on. We're actually just going to get the edges with a brush, and then we're going to switch to a roller to get better coverage. Be sure to get around the edge of any raw wood.
Nice heavy coat, that's it. See, way better than brushing.
Yeah.
Nope. I would just headbutt you if you're in the way.
Wait 6 to 8 hours before applying a second coat. It'll take an additional 7 days for full cure. I'm going to be sanding with this sanding block just to get the surface smooth before I stencil. I've already started roughing it up, and I've got 180 grit on the sanding block. I've got my houndstooth stencil set up and ready to go. I've just taped it on either side here. And I've also got some clamps holding it in place. What I'm going to do is concentrate on the center of the pattern, and then I'm going to come back and do the edges. And that's because I don't have a flat edge here. It's a little bit proud, and I'm using Breakthrough in a color called Carbon Copy. It's just a sort of grayed black. Let's just see what size I'm using. That's a number 10 stencil brush. So I'm going to dip it into the paint and offload it onto these paper towels. and then I'm going to proceed to stencil. So I've got just the tips of the bristles dipped in, and I've offloaded it onto paper towels, and it's fairly dry. So I'll start right here and just swirl the paint lightly. I'll probably end up doing 2 coats, so I'm just going to continue on until the paint runs dry. Just try to see if you've got good coverage. Shouldn't be any of the brown peeking through. And I'm using a very light touch. I want hardly any pressure because I don't want to be pushing the bristles underneath the stencil. I don't want any paint bleed. So a very dry brush and a light touch, and easy does it. And you should get a good result. Now I can feel the brush dragging, and that's telling me that it's just about time to reload. Let me just move the camera over here so you can see what I'm doing. That's looking good. Now we're going to move back over to the work. Now to my eye, I'm not seeing much of a contrast, so hopefully it will be enough. If it isn't, I might just go back in and use a much lighter paint. Maybe we'll just go in the complete opposite direction and do a white paint. Because I'm doing up against the edge here, I want this to be very dry, so I'm not going to reload. Peel that part back. Okay, let's just move over so you can see what I'm doing. So with my very dry brush, I'm just going to come in and do these last ones here. I'm going to let that dry just a touch more, and then I'm going to be back to complete a second coat. So I'm outside on this gorgeous day, and everybody else is outside too, so you can hear the background noise. It's probably our one last of summer, end of October, so gotta take it when you can get it. So I'm just gonna come in and do my second coat now. Just darken this up, and you really don't need much paint on the brush. You want it as dry as you can get it. Now this doesn't have to look perfect by any means. When I'm working on an old antique piece like this sewing machine table, I don't want the stencil to look that crisp. I want it to look like it has age, just like the piece itself. If you notice any brown spots from the wood still peeking through, just make sure you linger on those areas just a little bit more so you get good coverage. Okay, 2 more rows left, and then I have to do the 4 corners, and I have to do those with 2 coats of paint. So there's going to be a little bit of drying time in between. Anytime you don't want paint going a certain place, just tape it up with some painter's tape. I'm going to lift this. My first coat on the top here. So I've got first coats on my corners. Now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to finish the other side. There you go. All done. I'm going to put a top coat on, and I'm using this Varathane diamond wood finish. It's going to dry absolutely matte, which is exactly what I want. I don't want this antique looking bright and shiny and new. I'm going to add an additional stenciled effect with some aqua glaze. And I'm going to mix it together with some of this white paint. Okay, now to test it for transparency, so I might just add a little bit more glaze. Make sure you get around the rim so that it doesn't dry onto the container and prevent it from opening. And let's just give that another stir. Okay, so I'm gonna dip my bristles in. I'll just take the paint off of the actual stick, might as well. And I'm just barely getting the bristles wet. I'm still gonna go in and offload it. It's a little breezy here, so if you are working outside, just be sure to hold the stencil down as you go. I've repositioned the stencil now, and I'm just going to run a piece of green tape down the edge so that I don't come over. Okay, that should do it. Try to hold this down as best you can. So I'm going to take the stencil off now. So now I have the side set up and ready to go. And I'm going to continue with the houndstooth pattern on the side. As you can see, I've taped off the edge to try to prevent any of the white paint from getting onto that. The sides are much lighter than the back because they were never really properly stained or finished. So it is going to give me a slightly different look. But I don't mind that. I always like to stay true to the vintage age of the piece. So if there's inconsistency, then I really don't mind that at all. I just think it makes it more unique. Here's a trick when you're working with glaze. If you're not too sure if you've offloaded and have enough of a dry brush, just take a paint stick and just twirl it and see if you're getting any wet spots or how dark it is. And that's how light it was when I went in with my first round here. And so I am going to offload it so that I can get it a little more faded. I'm just over halfway done. And I'm just going to take it and lightly brush out any of the swirl marks that I see. So I'm dipping back into my paint, coming over to the paint stick, and that's looking pretty good. Not too much paint at all. You want it to look really, really dry. So I'm just going to move this over a touch, and we'll finish off these last 3 rows. I really can't believe the weather we're having. We're like up to 17, 18 degrees out here, which is just like stunning for this time of year. Just a few days ago we had snowfall. So I'm going to take full advantage of this weather and get some outdoor painting done. These clamps are a great help when you're doing something vertically. Normally I like to work on something that's perfectly flat and horizontal, but in an instance such as this, where the shape is very awkward, it can't be done like that, so you gotta make do with what you've got. And these clamps really do help. I had a piece of green tape just covering the bottom here so it wouldn't blow. So just lift that. I'm just gonna hold that and come in with just a touch of paint. And voila. And what I really like about this, I get the beauty of both worlds. I can see some of the wood and the paint. And I think that's looking quite lovely. Before we wrap this up, I just want to show you that underneath here, I've got a box of Alcan holding this up. And then wedged right in the middle here is this piece of wood that's angled, so I can get it right in there. We're working with oil-based colorants here. Into some mineral spirits, we've added some brown and a touch of black colorant. All we want to do is just stain the edges of the wood, so we're testing it out on the bottom first.
But that wood has a lot of color to it. We're just trying to darken it. It's soaking in. It's not like a maple that it just sits on top. It's sucking right in. So we want a little darker than that one. I still see a lot of red coming through. Well, this is the bottom as a sample. We're just going to stain the top and the ends. Okay, let's try this one more time. The red's still all coming through.
Yeah.
To me, it's still way too red. I wonder if it needed any brown in here.
Probably not.
You want to try a little just with black?
Do black?
I think you could try that. Let's do a sample. Because there's so much red coming through and we're doing such a thin stain.
Wouldn't it be funny if that's all we needed is just black?
Yeah, because really those marks on your wood downstairs are burn marks mostly from sawing it.
Yeah.
The rough edge. If you put this on something like maple, which we could try on there, you'll see a totally different color because there's no red coming through.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you have to try it on the wood you're staining, not a different piece.
That's a good point.
I'll show you. I'll do a test on both. Yeah, look at that color.
Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful. Now if I do that on here, on a piece of maple, look at the difference. Here you're putting all that red through.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
maybe,
so we're just doing the edges.
there we go. If you get a little bit on the front, you just have to sand it off.
Yeah, I'll just sand it.
Look at that. Beautiful. And the ends.
And the ends.
See how much it's taken on the ends?
Yeah, gorgeous.
We're not putting it on too wet because it doesn't need too much. See how quickly that's changing?
Yeah. Hardly needed any of that.
That's all
Let's
we
do
want.
the bottom too.
Okay.
But just take the dry rag.
Yeah. That's it. Look at that. Beautiful. We're not worried about these different patches of color. We could have sanded those out, but we're not going to see it.
Yeah. Beautiful.
There.
Thank you.
So there's your piece.